I never expected the worst day of my senior year to become the reason I fell in love with my best friend. If you'd asked me back then who the toughest person at school was, I wouldn't have named one of the football players or some guy who spent every weekend in the gym. I would have said Ethan, not because he was the biggest, because he enjoyed making people feel small, and for some reason, he'd chosen me. My name's Arthur. Back then I was 17, quiet, average at sports, and the kind of person teachers liked because I never caused problems. I preferred reading during lunch instead of yelling across the cafeteria. I wasn't exactly popular, but I had friends. One real friend, Diego. We'd known each other since we were 6 years old. Our parents met at a neighborhood barbecue, and from the moment we realized we both loved video games and hated vegetables, we became inseparable. People always joked that if they saw one of us, the other couldn't be far behind. They weren't wrong. Diego was everything I wasn't: confident, funny, the kind of guy who could walk into any room and somehow know everyone within 5 minutes. He played soccer, volunteered after school, and somehow still had time to help me study before every chemistry test. Girls loved him, teachers trusted him, even the principal seemed happy whenever Diego walked into the office. Meanwhile, I tried to stay invisible, and most days that worked, until Ethan decided it didn't. It started with little things. A shoulder bump in the hallway, books knocked out of my hands, comments whispered just loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Watch where you're going. You always look terrified. You gonna cry?" At first I ignored him. Everyone says bullies get bored if you don't react. Whoever came up with that had obviously never met Ethan. Ignoring him only seemed to make it more entertaining. Every week things got a little worse. One afternoon, he grabbed my backpack and tossed it onto the gym roof. Another day, he dumped chocolate milk over my homework just before class. The teachers always arrived a minute too late, and Ethan always smiled like nothing had happened. I never told my parents. I didn't want them worrying, and I definitely didn't tell Diego. At least, I tried not to. The problem with having a best friend for over 10 years is that they notice things before you do. One Friday after school, we were walking toward the bus stop when Diego suddenly stopped. "Arthur." "What?" "You've been quiet all week." "I've just been tired." He looked at me for a few seconds. "No." "What do you mean, no?" "You only scratch the back of your neck when you're lying." I froze. You literally just did it." I sighed. "I don't want to talk about it." Diego didn't push, he simply nodded. "Okay." That should have been the end of it. Except he knew me too well. The following Monday, everything exploded. We had PE first period, basketball, which was already bad news for me. I wasn't terrible, I just wasn't good either. Near the end of class, I went up for a rebound. Someone shoved me from behind. Hard. I hit the floor face first. The entire gym echoed with laughter. My lips split against the hardwood. Blood dripped onto the floor. Coach turned around just in time to see me getting up. "What happened?" Ethan shrugged. "He tripped." Coach looked unconvinced, but there wasn't any proof. I muttered that I was fine. I wasn't. By lunchtime, my lip had swollen enough that people kept staring. I grabbed my tray and looked around for Diego. He usually saved us a table. Today, he wasn't there. Probably helping a teacher again. I sat alone. Big mistake. Ethan and two of his friends walked over carrying their lunches. He smiled. "You sitting by yourself again?" I ignored him. He sat across from me anyway. Arthur." He reached over and picked up my apple. "I think this belongs to me." I held out my hand. "Give it back." He laughed. "Or what?" The cafeteria had gone strangely quiet. People noticed. Nobody stepped in. Then Ethan flicked the apple across the room. It hit the floor and rolled under another table. His friends laughed. I stood up. I said, "Give it back." For the first time, his smile disappeared. "Oh?" He stood too, towering over me. "What are you going to do?" I knew I couldn't win, but after months of saying nothing, something inside me snapped. I shoved him, not hard, barely enough to move him. The cafeteria gasped. Ethan looked down at his shirt like I'd committed some unforgivable crime. Then he punched me. Everything went blurry. I crashed backward into the table. Food scattered everywhere. My ears rang. Before I could even get up, Ethan grabbed my hoodie. "Thought you were brave?" Another shove, another laugh from somewhere behind him. Then, "Get your hands off him." The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be, because everyone recognized it. Ethan slowly turned around, and there stood Diego. His backpack was still hanging off one shoulder. His eyes, I'd never seen them look like that before, not angry, furious. He stepped between us without even looking at me. "If you touch Arthur again," he said quietly, "you're going to have a problem with me." For the first time since all this started, Ethan looked uncertain. The cafeteria went completely silent. Even the people who'd been laughing seconds earlier stopped talking. Diego stood between me and Ethan, his shoulders squared, his expression calm in a way that somehow felt even more intimidating. Ethan forced a laugh. "What? You his bodyguard now?" Diego didn't smile. "I asked you a question." Ethan crossed his arms. And if I don't listen, then you'll find out." Nobody moved. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I reached up and touched my lip. My fingers came away with fresh blood. Diego noticed. That tiny detail seemed to make something inside him harden. He glanced back at me for just a second. "You okay?" I nodded automatically. Yeah. It was an obvious lie. He knew it. Before either of them could say another word, two teachers rushed over after hearing the commotion. "What happened here?" Everyone started talking at once. Coach arrived a moment later, looked at my split lip, then at the overturned lunch tray. Within minutes, Ethan, Diego, and I were all walking toward the principal's office. The principal sighed before anyone had even sat down. "I've heard enough stories involving you two today." He looked at Ethan. "You first." Ethan shrugged, like the whole thing was a joke, and "Arthur shoved me." The principal turned toward me. Is that true?" I swallowed. Yes. "And why?" I looked down at my shoes. Before I could answer, Diego spoke. "Because Ethan has been bullying him for months." The room fell quiet. The principal frowned. "Months?" Diego nodded. "Hallways, gym, cafeteria. He throws Arthur's things around almost every week." The principal looked at me. "Arthur, no, why didn't you tell anyone?" I didn't want to make it worse. He leaned back in his chair. "It already was worse." Then he looked toward Ethan. "Is any of this true?" Ethan rolled his eyes. "They're exaggerating." "Did you hit Arthur?" He pushed me first. "So, that's a yes." Silence. The principal folded his hands. "I'll be reviewing security footage from the cafeteria and speaking with witnesses." Ethan's confidence disappeared just a little. "There were cameras?" "There are always cameras." By the time we left the office, classes were nearly over. Neither of us said much while walking home. Finally, Diego broke the silence. "You've been hiding this from me." "I'm sorry." He stopped walking. "No." I looked at him. "I'm not upset because you didn't tell me." His voice softened. "I'm upset because you thought you had to deal with it alone." That hit harder than Ethan's punch. I stared at the sidewalk. "I didn't want you getting involved." He laughed once. "You seriously thought I wouldn't?" I hoped. He shook his head. "Arthur," he rested a hand on my shoulder. "We've been best friends for 11 years. I know. If somebody hurts you," he paused, "they're hurting someone I care about." The words stayed with me. Someone I care about. It sounded simple, friendly, normal. So why did hearing it make my chest feel strangely warm? That evening, Diego showed up at my house carrying 2 milkshakes. My mom smiled as soon as she opened the door. "Arthur's upstairs." I figured. He walked into my room without knocking. "You look terrible." "Thanks. I mean your face." "I know." He handed me the chocolate milkshake. "Peace offering." "For what?" "For yelling at you." "You didn't yell." I thought about it. I laughed. My lip immediately reminded me why laughing was a bad idea. Diego winced. "Sorry. It's okay." We spent the next 2 hours doing what we'd always done, video games, terrible jokes, complaining about homework for a little while. Everything felt normal again, until my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message. Hope your boyfriend saves you tomorrow, too. Another message appeared. Next time, he won't be there. I felt my stomach drop. Diego noticed instantly. What happened? Nothing. He raised an eyebrow. Arthur. I sighed and handed him my phone. He read the messages. His jaw tightened. Without saying a word, he took screenshots. What are you doing? Saving evidence. It's probably just Ethan. Exactly. He looked at me. Block the number. You think that'll stop him? No. He slipped his own phone into his pocket. But we'll make sure someone else does. The next morning, rumors were everywhere. Apparently several students had told the principal what they'd seen. Even people I'd never spoken to admitted Ethan had been picking on me for months. For the first time, people actually believed me. Ethan wasn't suspended immediately, but he was removed from the basketball team while the investigation continued. He looked furious. As we walked through the hallway between classes, I noticed dozens of students staring at him instead of me. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, it made me nervous. Guys like Ethan didn't like losing. I had a feeling this wasn't over, not even close. I turned toward my locker. Then I heard footsteps behind us, fast, too fast. Diego reacted before I even knew what was happening. He grabbed my backpack and yanked me backward. A second later, a metal trash can crashed exactly where I'd been standing. Someone had shoved it from the top of the stairs. It slammed into the wall with a deafening bang. Students screamed. Teachers came running. And standing at the top of the staircase, looking straight at us, was Ethan. Except this time, he wasn't smiling. The hallway erupted into chaos. Teachers shouted for everyone to move back. The metal trash can spun across the floor before finally crashing into a row of lockers with a loud metallic clang. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might throw up. If Diego hadn't pulled me back, it would have hit me. I looked at him. He was still gripping my backpack strap. His knuckles had turned white. You okay? He asked. I nodded automatically, even though I wasn't. He finally let go. A teacher stormed up the stairs toward Ethan, while another checked to make sure nobody had been hurt. What happened? Someone yelled. I saw him push it. No, it slipped. There was nobody else up there. Students were talking over one another. Ethan tried to defend himself. It was an accident. Nobody looked convinced. By lunchtime, the entire school knew. Security cameras had captured everything. Even if they couldn't prove Ethan intended to hit me, they could clearly see he shoved the trash can toward the staircase while looking directly at us. That afternoon, he was suspended indefinitely. When the announcement spread through school, people seemed relieved. I should have been too. Instead, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't finished. That evening, Diego insisted on walking me home. You don't have to. I'm aware. You live 20 minutes in the opposite direction. I know where I live. I smiled despite myself. You've always been stubborn. Says the guy who tried fixing his bike with duct tape. It worked. For 12 minutes. We both laughed. For the first time in weeks, the tension between us eased. As we reached my driveway, Diego stopped. Arthur. Yeah? If anything happens, I'll tell you. You promise? I promise. He looked at me for another second before smiling. Good. Then he held out his fist. Still best friends? I bumped it with mine. Always. A week passed. Without Ethan around, school felt lighter. People actually talked to me now. Some even apologized for never stepping in. One afternoon, a girl from my history class sat beside me. I'm sorry. For what? I saw Ethan mess with you before. She looked embarrassed. I should have said something. I smiled weakly. It's okay. No. She shook her head. It wasn't. Her words stayed with me. Maybe the hardest part of being bullied wasn't the insults. It was believing nobody cared. Finding out people did, even if it came late, helped more than I expected. Friday afternoon, Diego convinced me to skip studying. We're going to the park. I have homework. You'll survive. My chemistry grade won't. I'll help you tomorrow. He practically dragged me there. The weather was perfect. Kids played soccer. Families walked their dogs. For a while, we just sat on the grass, throwing a baseball back and forth. You know, Diego said, I've missed this. What? You smiling. I caught the ball. I smile. Not lately. I looked away. I guess not. He tossed another throw. You don't have to pretend you're okay around me. I know. You can tell me anything. There it was again, that warmth in my chest, by the way he looked at me, like I actually mattered. I quickly blamed it on relief, on gratitude, anything but the truth I didn't want to think about. The peaceful afternoon ended with a phone call. Diego answered. His expression changed immediately. What? He stood up. When? My stomach tightened. He hung up slowly. What happened? That was Noah. Our classmate? He nodded. He just saw Ethan. So? He isn't suspended anymore. What? His parents appealed the decision. I felt cold. They reduced it. Diego frowned. He's coming back Monday. Monday arrived far too quickly. Every hallway suddenly felt smaller. Every loud noise made me jump. Diego noticed. He stayed beside me all morning. When we walked between classes, he never let more than a few feet separate us. You don't have to babysit me. I'm not. It kind of feels like you are. I'm making sure my best friend gets through the day. I wanted to argue. Instead, I secretly appreciated it. Last period finally ended. Students poured into the parking lot. Diego had soccer practice, so we'd agreed to meet afterward. I'll only be an hour. I'll wait in the library. No wandering off. I rolled my eyes. Yes, Mom. He laughed. Text me. I will. I watched him jog toward the athletic field. Then I headed toward the library. Or at least, I tried to. Halfway there, someone stepped into the hallway in front of me. Ethan. He looked different. His lip was split. There was a bruise near one eye. His suspension clearly hadn't been easy at home. He stared at me. Without saying anything, I turned to leave. Arthur. I kept walking. I said stop. I didn't. A hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around. What do you want? He leaned closer. His voice was almost calm. You ruined my life. I didn't do anything. You got everyone against me. You did that yourself. His eyes darkened. You think your little hero can protect you forever? Before I could answer, a familiar voice echoed down the hallway. He won't have to. Ethan looked up, so did I. Diego was standing at the end of the corridor. He was still wearing his soccer uniform. He must have left practice the second I didn't answer his messages. His eyes locked onto Ethan, then he started walking toward us, slowly, deliberately, and for the second time. I watched Ethan take a step backward. Diego didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The entire hallway seemed to go quiet as he stopped a few feet away from us. Ethan. Ethan forced a smirk. Here comes the hero. Diego ignored the comment. I told you to leave Arthur alone. I'm just talking to him. Arthur. The way Ethan said my name made my stomach twist. Diego looked at the hand, still gripping my shoulder. Take your hand off him. For a second, nobody moved. Then Ethan slowly let go. There. He took a step back. Happy? Diego walked over until he was standing beside me. You okay? I am now. Those 3 words slipped out before I even thought about them. Diego glanced at me for a moment. A tiny smile appeared. Then he looked back at Ethan. You've made your point. Ethan laughed bitterly. You two really are inseparable. We're best friends, Diego answered. No. Ethan shook his head. It's more than that. The words hung in the air. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Diego didn't react. He simply said, Go home. A teacher turned the corner just then. Ethan muttered something under his breath before walking away. Neither of us spoke until he disappeared. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. You scared me. We were outside now, walking toward the soccer field. I looked at Diego. What? When you didn't answer your phone. I pulled it from my pocket. 5 missed calls, 3 messages. Where are you? Arthur, answer me. I left it on silent. He rubbed the back of his neck. I thought... He stopped himself. You thought what? He laughed quietly. Never mind. No, tell me. He sighed. I thought he found you. I looked down at the sidewalk. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. He nudged my shoulder. Just answer next time. I will. I know. That weekend, our parents organized a barbecue. It wasn't planned because of everything that had happened. They'd been doing neighborhood cookouts for years. Still, it felt nice. For one afternoon, nobody talked about school. Diego helped my dad at the grill. I sat on the patio pretending to read while secretly watching him. He laughed with everyone, played soccer with the younger kids, helped Mrs. Carter carry folding chairs without being asked. He always did things like that. Natural kindness, the kind that couldn't be faked. My mom sat beside me. You've been smiling a lot lately. Have I? Mm-hmm. She followed my gaze toward Diego, then looked back at me. You two really look out for each other. We always have. She smiled knowingly. I hope you always do. So do I. Later that evening, Diego and I sat on the back porch, eating leftover pie. You know what I realized? He asked. What? You never told me what you want to do after graduation. I don't know. You have to know something. I've thought about graphic design. You'd be good at that. You think so? I know so. You've never even seen my drawings. He laughed. Arthur. What? I've known you since first grade. So? You doodled on literally every math worksheet. I did not. You drew dragons during multiplication. I laughed. Okay, maybe. And they were actually pretty good? I looked at him. You remember that? I remember everything. For some reason. That sentence stayed with me long after the conversation moved on. Monday morning started peacefully, too peacefully. By lunch, I almost believed everything had settled down. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. I frowned. Meet me behind the gym after school. Alone. No name. No explanation. A second message arrived. Unless you're too scared. I immediately knew who it was. I deleted the messages, blocked the number, then told myself to ignore it. After school, Diego stayed late for student council. I'll walk you home afterward. You've got a meeting. It'll only take 30 minutes. I'll be in the library. He pointed at me. Library. I know. No detours. I saluted dramatically. Yes, sir. He laughed. You've been spending too much time with me. I really did head toward the library, at least until I heard shouting outside. Curiosity got the better of me. When I stepped through the side doors, I realized I'd wandered closer to the gym than I meant to. The area behind the building was almost empty, except for one person, Ethan. He leaned against the brick wall with his hands in his pockets. I knew you'd come. I didn't. I turned to leave. Arthur. I kept walking. You really think Diego can save you every second of every day? I didn't answer. My dad's transferring me. That made me stop. What? I'm leaving next week. I slowly looked back. His face didn't have the same arrogance anymore. Only frustration. You got what you wanted. I never wanted this. He laughed. Don't lie. I wanted you to leave me alone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan shook his head. You know what your problem is? No. You think people actually care. I frowned. They do. They'll forget about you. Before I could answer, he suddenly shoved me hard against the wall. Pain shot through my shoulder. You'll always be weak. He raised his fist, but it never landed. Someone grabbed his wrist, hard. Diego. He must have run the entire way from the school building. His breathing was heavy. His expression was unlike anything I'd ever seen. You're done. Ethan tried to pull free. Diego didn't let go. Teachers were already running toward us. Students poured out of the nearby exits. Everyone had seen, and this time, There was nowhere for Ethan to hide. Everything happened so fast that my brain couldn't keep up. Diego had Ethan's wrist locked in his grip before Ethan's fist came anywhere near me. "What are you doing?" Ethan snapped, trying to yank his arm free. "I'm stopping you." His voice was calm. Too calm. That was always when Diego was the most serious. Students gathered near the doors, whispering to each other. Within seconds, 2 teachers ran across the courtyard. "Break it up." Diego immediately released Ethan and stepped back. "I didn't hit him," he said. "You don't need to," one teacher replied, looking at Ethan. "We saw enough." Another teacher helped me away from the wall. "Arthur, are you hurt?" "My shoulder's sore." "Can you move it?" I nodded. "It just hurts." The teacher sighed before turning toward Ethan. "Principal, now." For the 3rd time that semester, we walked toward the office. Only this time, half the school had witnessed what happened. The principal didn't waste time. He reviewed security footage from the cameras behind the gym while witnesses gave statements. There wasn't much to debate. The video clearly showed Ethan waiting behind the building. It showed me trying to leave. It showed him shoving me. And it showed Diego stepping in before anything worse could happen. After nearly an hour, the principal looked exhausted. "Ethan," he folded his hands, "you've been given multiple chances." Silence. "You've ignored every warning." More silence. "I'm recommending immediate expulsion." Ethan stared at the floor. For the first time, he didn't argue. When we finally left school, the sun was beginning to set. Neither Diego nor I spoke for several minutes. I almost didn't make it. I looked over. "What?" I was still in the student council meeting. He kicked a pebble along the sidewalk. My phone buzzed. I frowned. "My phone?" He nodded. "It wasn't from you." "Then who?" "Noah." He pulled out his phone. The message was short. "Arthur just walked toward the gym. Ethan's outside." I swallowed. "If Noah hadn't texted me..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I knew exactly what he meant. "Thank you." He shook his head. "You never have to thank me." "I do." "No?" He stopped walking and faced me. "I would have done that for you 100 times. His eyes met mine. "You're my best friend." Those words were supposed to make me feel safe. Instead, they made something inside me ache, because lately, best friend didn't feel like enough. The next day was strangely quiet. News of Ethan's expulsion spread faster than anything else had all year. Students talked about it in every class. Some said he deserved it. Others said his parents would sue the school. I stayed out of every conversation. I just wanted everything to be over. During lunch, Diego sat across from me. "You've barely eaten." "I'm not hungry." "You skipped breakfast too." "I know." He studied my face. "Arthur." "What?" "You've been somewhere else all day." I hesitated, then sighed. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Were you ever scared?" He frowned. "Of Ethan?" I nodded. Diego didn't answer immediately. Finally, he admitted, yeah. I blinked. "You were?" "Of course." "You never looked scared." "That's because if I looked scared..." He smiled softly. "You would have been terrified." His honesty caught me off guard. "I thought you were fearless." He laughed. "Not even close." "So why did you keep standing up to him?" He looked at me like the answer was obvious. "Because you mattered more than my fear." My heart skipped. Neither of us spoke after that. Saturday morning, my parents suggested we all go to the town festival, food trucks, live music, games. Diego's family came too. It felt almost normal again. We wandered through the booths, teasing each other over impossible carnival games. "I bet I can win you that giant bear," Diego said. "You've never won one. Today's different." He missed every shot. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my drink. "You owe me $5. "I owe you nothing. You talked yourself up. I was emotionally confident. You were terrible." Details. An older woman working the game smiled at us. "You boys make a cute team." I nearly choked on my lemonade. Diego blinked, then laughed. "We've known each other forever." "I can tell," she said warmly. "Take the bear anyway." She handed Diego the oversized stuffed bear. He looked surprised. I didn't win. I know. She winked. But I think your friend deserves it. Diego turned and handed it straight to me. There. You keep it. No. He smiled. I wanted to win it for you anyway. I hugged the ridiculously oversized bear while trying not to smile too much. As the sun began setting, we wandered toward the hill overlooking the festival. The music below sounded distant, people laughed, children ran through the grass chasing bubbles. It was peaceful. We sat in silence for a while, then Diego spoke. You know. What? I almost lost you. I looked at him. What do you mean? Behind the gym. His voice was quiet. When I saw him shove you, he swallowed. I've never been that scared. Something in his expression made my chest tighten. He wasn't remembering the fight. He was remembering the possibility that he'd arrived too late. I was okay. I know. But I keep thinking. He stared toward the festival lights. What if I hadn't gotten there? I moved a little closer. You did. He nodded slowly. Yeah, you always do. He smiled without looking at me. I'll always try. A cool breeze drifted across the hill. Without thinking, our shoulders brushed. Neither of us moved away. For the first time, the silence between us didn't feel awkward. It felt comfortable, like home, and somewhere deep inside me. I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for weeks. I wasn't just grateful for Diego, I was falling in love with him. After that evening at the festival, nothing really changed, at least not on the outside. Diego still texted me every morning, we still walked to school together, we still argued over music, homework, and which pizza place in town was the best. Everything looked exactly the same. The only difference was me. Now, every little thing he did meant more than it should have. When he laughed, I noticed. When he smiled at me, I noticed. When he casually bumped my shoulder while we walked, I definitely noticed. And that was becoming a problem. One afternoon we were studying at my house, or at least we were supposed to be. My chemistry book had been open on the same page for nearly 15 minutes. You've read that paragraph 4 times. I looked up. What? Diego smiled. You haven't turned the page once. I was thinking. Dangerous hobby. I rolled my eyes. Very funny. Yeah, he leaned back in his chair. What's going on? Nothing. Liar. How do you always know? You've got the same face you make before a math test. I have a math face? Oh, yeah. He nodded dramatically. Very dramatic. I laughed. I hate you. No, you don't. No, I smiled. I really don't. For a second, we just looked at each other. Neither of us said anything. Then my mom walked into the kitchen carrying cookies. There you are. She placed the plate between us. I figured you two needed fuel. Diego immediately grabbed one. Mrs. Bennet, these are amazing. She laughed. You say that every time. Because it's always true. She looked between us and smiled. I've never seen 2 boys spend this much time together without getting sick of each other. Diego shrugged. I think Arthur's stuck with me. I think you're right, I answered quietly. Graduation was only 3 weeks away. The entire school seemed lighter now that Ethan was gone. People smiled more. Teachers seemed less stressed. Even I felt different. Until guidance counselor meetings started. Everyone was talking about colleges, future plans, scholarships. One question kept coming up. Where are you going after graduation? I still wasn't sure. Diego already knew. He'd been accepted to a university only an hour away. Soccer scholarship, business degree. I was genuinely happy for him. But there was one problem. I hadn't been accepted anywhere nearby. The art school I wanted was nearly 6 hours away. I hadn't told him yet. That Friday, we walked home through the park. You've been hiding something. I sighed. Am I that obvious? To everyone. He shrugged. Probably not. To me? Very. I looked down at the path. I got accepted. His face lit up. Arthur. He pulled me into a quick hug before I even realized what was happening. I knew you would. I hugged him back automatically. For one perfect second, nothing else existed. Then we stepped apart. So why do you look sad? My smile faded. It's in Chicago. His expression slowly changed. "Oh, yeah." Neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, "That's 6 hours away." "I know. When do you have to decide?" "Next month." He nodded slowly. "That's amazing." He sounded sincere, but there was something else underneath, something quieter, something disappointed. The following week flew by, final exams, senior activities, yearbook signing. Everyone talked about the future. I kept pretending I wasn't terrified of it. One afternoon, our English teacher asked us to write letters to ourselves. Open them 5 years from now. Most students laughed. I didn't. Instead, I found myself writing about one person, Diego. About how I hoped we'd still be friends, about how I hoped distance wouldn't change us, about how there was something I wanted to tell him, but probably never would. I folded the letter before anyone could read it. The last soccer game of the season arrived. I stood in the crowd with Diego's parents cheering louder than anyone. With only minutes left, Diego scored the winning goal. The stadium exploded. After the game, students flooded the field. His teammates surrounded him. I waited near the fence. Eventually, he spotted me. "There you are." He jogged over, still breathing hard. "You were incredible." He grinned. "I got lucky." "No," I laughed. "You're just good." He scratched the back of his neck. "It means more hearing that from you." "Why?" "Because you don't say things you don't mean." Before I could answer, his coach called him over. "Diego!" "Coming." He looked back at me. "Don't leave." "I won't." Almost an hour later, the field had emptied. The sky was turning orange. We walked toward the parking lot together. "I've been thinking," Diego said. "Uh-oh." He smiled. "Remember our treehouse?" I laughed. "The one your dad built?" "Yeah. We haven't been there in years." "I know." He looked toward the old woods behind the neighborhood. "Come with me tomorrow." "To the treehouse?" He nodded. "One last time before graduation." I smiled. "I'd like that." What I didn't know was that tomorrow would change both of our lives forever. The next afternoon felt strangely different, not because anything had happened, because I couldn't stop thinking about what I wanted to say. I must have rewritten the same sentence in my head 100 times while walking toward the woods behind our neighborhood. Diego was already there, leaning against the old wooden fence with his hands in his hoodie pocket. "You made it." "You thought I wouldn't?" He smiled. "Never." We started down the narrow trail we'd walked dozens of times as kids. The trees had grown taller. The path looked smaller. Everything felt familiar and completely different at the same time. "You remember when you fell into the creek?" Diego asked. I groaned. "I was 8. "You cried." "I did not." "You absolutely did." "I was covered in mud." "And crying." "I was emotionally expressing myself." He laughed so hard he had to stop walking. "You've gotten funnier." "I've gotten older." "Same thing." The tree house looked older than I remembered. The wood had faded. Some of the railing was loose, but it was still standing. We climbed the ladder carefully. Inside, the tiny room still had childish drawings carved into the walls. Our initials were everywhere. A+D, best friends forever. I smiled. I remember carving this. My dad pretended to be mad. He secretly loved it. He definitely did. We sat with our legs hanging over the edge, looking across the neighborhood. The view hadn't changed much. "You know," Diego said quietly, "I used to think we'd live here forever." I did too. But now, everything's changing. He nodded. "Yeah." For a while, we just watched the wind move through the trees. Then Diego broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "When Ethan started bullying you..." I looked over. "Why didn't you tell me?" I sighed. "I've asked myself that a lot." "And?" I was embarrassed. He frowned. "You never had to be." "I know that now. I would have helped from day one." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "I hated seeing you scared." His voice cracked slightly. "I hated knowing somebody made you feel unsafe." I felt my throat tighten. "You fixed that." I tried. "You did." I looked straight at him. "You made me feel safe again." He smiled sadly. "I'm glad." The silence returned, but this one felt heavier, like both of us knew something important was waiting to be said. Finally, I took a deep breath. Diego. Yeah? I need to tell you something. He turned toward me. You can tell me anything. My heart pounded. I've been trying not to feel this. His expression softened. But I can't. He didn't interrupt. I know we're best friends. Another pause. And maybe telling you this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to keep going. I think I fell in love with you. The words escaped before I could stop them. Everything became quiet. Even the birds seemed to disappear. I couldn't look at him anymore. I'm sorry, Arthur. I shouldn't have said anything. I know you probably don't feel the same. I stood up. I'll go. Before I could reach the ladder, a hand gently caught my wrist. I froze. Don't leave. I slowly turned around. Diego was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before, relief, almost disbelief. You idiot. I blinked. What? He laughed quietly. You absolute idiot. You really thought you were the only one? My brain stopped working. What? He stepped closer. So many times. He smiled through nervous eyes. I wanted to tell you. I couldn't breathe. But every time I almost did, he shook his head. I was terrified I'd lose my best friend. I stared at him. I've loved you for months, Arthur. My eyes widened. Probably longer. You have? He nodded. I think... He laughed nervously. I think it started the day you stayed up all night helping me study for finals. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought I was imagining everything. So did I. We both laughed, mostly because neither of us knew what else to do. Then Diego looked at me, really looked at me. So, can I do something I've wanted to do for a long time? I smiled. You don't have to ask. He moved slowly, giving me every chance to step away. I didn't. His forehead rested gently against mine. I meant what I said. So did I. A second later, he kissed me, soft, careful, like he was afraid I might disappear. The moment only lasted a few seconds. But when we pulled apart, we were both smiling. I can't believe we wasted all this time, Diego whispered. I laughed. We're not wasting any more. He reached for my hand. This time, I held it. Far below us, the afternoon sun stretched across the neighborhood where we'd grown up together, and for the first time, the future didn't scare me anymore. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. We just stood there in the old treehouse, smiling like two complete idiots. Diego was still holding my hand. Every time I looked at him, I had to remind myself this wasn't another daydream. You know, he said, with a laugh, I've imagined this conversation about 1,000 times. Really? None of the versions went this well. I smiled. What happened in the other versions? You told me you only saw me as a brother. I made a face. You! I know. He laughed. I hated those imaginary conversations. I bumped his shoulder. I'm glad reality was better. So am I. We stayed there until the sun began to disappear behind the trees. Eventually, Diego sighed. Our parents are probably wondering where we are. Definitely. My mom's probably texted me 20 times. He checked his phone. So once 18. I laughed. Close enough. As we climbed down the ladder, he reached for my hand again. This time it felt natural, comfortable, like we'd been doing it forever. Halfway down the trail, we heard footsteps. We immediately let go. Mr. Reynolds, one of our neighbors, smiled as he walked past with his dog. Good to see you boys back out here. You too, Diego answered. The moment he disappeared around the corner, we looked at each other, then burst into laughter. I guess we're going to have to get used to that, I said. Yeah, he gently nudged my shoulder. But we'll figure it out. Graduation arrived 3 days later. The gymnasium was packed with families. My parents sat beside Diego's, just like they had for every school event since elementary school. When my name was called, I crossed the stage to loud applause. A few minutes later, so, I'm graduating with honors? The announcer called Diego's name. He walked across the stage wearing the biggest smile I'd ever seen. I don't think I clapped. I think I practically shouted. After the ceremony, everyone flooded onto the football field. Parents hugged their kids. Friends took pictures. Teachers congratulated students. My mom pulled Diego into a hug before I even reached her. "We're so proud of both of you." His mom wiped away tears. "I told you boys this day would come." It came too fast. My dad laughed. While everyone was distracted taking photos, Diego quietly slipped beside me. "You busy tonight?" I smiled. "I don't think so." "Good. I was hoping I could take my boyfriend out for dinner." Boyfriend. Hearing that word made my heart race. I'd like that. We decided to tell our parents a week later. Neither of us wanted graduation day to become about anything except finishing school. Still, I was nervous, very nervous. Diego squeezed my hand before we walked into my living room. "You ready?" "No?" "Me neither." We sat down across from our parents. My mom immediately noticed. "Why do you both look so serious?" Diego looked at me. I looked back. Finally, I took a deep breath. "There's something we'd like to tell you." Silence filled the room. I glanced toward Diego. "We're together." Nobody spoke. For one very long second, nobody moved. Then my mom smiled. A real smile. I was wondering how long it would take. I blinked. "What?" She laughed. "Oh, sweetheart." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You boys have looked at each other differently for months." Diego's dad chuckled. I lost a bet. "You knew?" Diego asked. His mother laughed. "We weren't completely sure. But we hoped." My dad stood up and hugged me. "As long as you're happy." He looked at Diego. "And you keep taking care of each other." "Always," Diego answered. Then that's all that matters." The relief hit me so hard I nearly cried. Summer passed quickly. I accepted my place at the art school in Chicago. Diego still planned to attend the university an hour from home. The distance scared both of us, but this time we faced it together. The night before I left, we returned to the treehouse one last time. The sky was full of stars. "I bought something," Diego said. He reached into his pocket and handed me a small silver keychain. It had a tiny shield engraved on it. On the back were 4 simple words. "I'll always protect you." I looked at him. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." I smiled through tears. "I'll keep it forever." "I know." I reached into my backpack. "I got you something too." He opened the small box. Inside was a bracelet made from dark leather. The inside was engraved with one sentence. "Home is wherever you are." His eyes became watery. "I love it." "I love you." He smiled. "I love you too." People often ask when our relationship really started. Was it in the treehouse, at graduation, that first kiss? Honestly, I think it started long before either of us realized. It started every time Diego walked beside me when I felt alone, every time he noticed I wasn't okay before anyone else did, every time he chose courage over comfort because someone he loved needed him. People remember him as the boy who stood up to a bully. I remember something much bigger. I remember the friend who never stopped protecting me, and years later, he's still doing exactly that. Just now, he gets to hold my hand while he does.